Hey guys, so we're going to be talking about discard because I've had a few questions. My hair looks a little bit crazy today, but that's okay. So, okay. I have some of you guys that have a mature, ready-to-use starter because you either got it from a family member or friend, and now you have this new starter that's like ready to use, but you have no idea what to do with it. So I know there's at least two of you guys that have that, Beth and Amy. And then we also have some of you guys that are still working on your starter. It's not ready to bake with, but you're gonna be getting there soon. And some people have asked me about discard, what it means, what you do with it. So I wanted to show you guys, here's my jar. This is my OG starter that I've had since August. Yesterday I fed it, and then after a few hours, it had come up to the top, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna bake bread with it. So I made dough last night. And then, so what I did was I scooped some out to make my dough, and then I re-fed the starter, 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of water, because I had taken out 90 grams of my starter to make bread with, okay? And then after I re-fed it, I just let it sit all night. And so here's where we're at now. It's still, up here. But, it's starting to get hungry. So what happens is, if we never take stuff out and we don't refeed it, what's in here is going to start to get hungry because it's eaten up all the flour that was in here, okay? So that's why you need to either discard a portion of it, or you need to take some out and actually make bread with it and then refeed it, okay? So what you can do with your discard is basically put it in another jar. So this is like I said, my OG starter from the beginning. Of course, I switch it to new jars sometimes because after a week or two, it kind of starts to get yucky on the top. So I'll flip it to a new jar, but there's always some left, right, of the old starter that I've had going on for a long time. Because whenever you discard, you're only taking out about half of the jar. Maybe a little bit more of that. You can take 50 to 80% out of your jar, but you want to leave at least 20 to 50% in here, okay, whenever you're discarding. So what I can do with the discard is put it in a new jar. You can use whatever size you want. I mean, you can use a container like this. You could use, I don't know, a plastic container of some kind if you want to keep it in that. I tend to actually use the really small ones. A lot of people have a big old discard jar and they just keep adding their discard to it. So every day that they're scooping some out and discarding and refeeding this guy, they're taking the discard and putting it in this jar, and then it just keeps stacking up and stacking up in here. The discard portion, you're never gonna refeed, okay? This is just gonna stay in the fridge until you decide to make something with it. Things that you can make with discard are pancakes, waffles, cookies, brownies, pizza crust, muffins. I'm just listing the things that I've made so far. I mean, there's even hamburger bun recipes that use discard. There's all kinds of good stuff, okay? So you're gonna use your good stuff or your discard for other things besides making a loaf of bread, okay? This, like I said, can be done in small jars. I like to keep it in the small jars personally, so I have multiple of these. I'll have like sometimes several of these in the fridge full of discard. The reason I like the small ones is because I can just kind of rotate them, and I know, this discard is old, that goes to the front, the new stuff is kind of moved to the back. And so often when I'm using a discard recipe, I end up using basically this whole jar, or maybe half of it. But it just keeps things moving better, then I can just wash this jar and then I have that new one to use. So that's just me. Again, you could just keep putting your discard in the same thing, stack it up, put it back in the fridge. I want to show you some discard that I have. I have used up all my fresh discard, but I found an old discard jar that had got pushed to the back of the fridge. I want to show you something. Discard could be saved in the fridge for who knows how long. Some people say it can be saved in there for months or whatever. Some people say a couple weeks. It's kind of up to you, but here's what happens. The longer you leave it in there, it can form this thing called hooch. And see this liquid, okay, at the top. Now, often the liquid could be like grayish or purple, and you can actually just take that Just take a spoon and mix the hooch right back into this discard and use it in your recipe. However, if it gets really funky and you see anything like black in there, or it just doesn't look like something you want to mix in, you'll probably know. It'll be like a gut feeling. You might want to toss it and just forget about it. I'm going to say I have no idea how long this jar has been in here since I just found it, and like don't know how long it's been in the back of my fridge. I don't know if you can see. It just looks really murky to me. I'm kind of just not wanting to trust it, and I'm okay with just tossing this. I'm like, you know what? I don't really want to chance that one. But it's probably fine, but I'm just going to toss that. I don't want to use it. So right now I have no other discard to use. So I could either take some of this out and just keep it as discard and refeed this guy, but really what I want to do right now is make bread. So I'm going to be taking a portion out to make bread. So really, when you're making a loaf of bread, you're technically discarding, okay? Because if we just leave this in here and you say, oh, I just want to keep feeding it, and you don't discard any, first of all, it's not really going to fit in here unless you have a big jar. Then you're probably going to think, okay, I'll just feed it again. I'm not going to discard anything. I'm just going to keep feeding and adding more. The problem is you're going to have to end up feeding so much more because you have so much in here. You know what I mean? Like multiplying how much it's grown and how much you need to feed it, it's just not going to make sense. It's going to be not scalable for you unless you're baking like ridiculously huge batches of bread, which I'm sure most of you aren't, okay? But like I said, the other thing is this thing needs to eat some more stuff, okay? So he needs more flour, he needs more water. So we do want to take some out so he has room and put some more back in so he can feed off of it and grow back this nice looking starter. So anyways, I'm going to be making some dough with this right now. I guess I could stay on and just do the dough making process again. I know I've done this live before, but I'll do it again because I know it might make some of you guys feel more comfy, you know, whenever you do get started with your sourdough journey on how to do it. And if you don't want to watch this process, you can hop off at this point. Like if you just wanted to learn about the discard, that's fine. So let's see, what do I want to start with? Let's start by measuring our flour. Actually, let's do our discard. I should have got it. I'm looking around because I should have gotten a different bowl. This one's so heavy to put on my scale, but I'll do it anyways. So I'm going to be taking out 90 grams of this guy. I guess I could use a spatula, but I usually just shake it out. A little bit slow. He's sticky today. That's only 40 so far. Get a spoon. Here we go. So that's a little over, so I'm gonna actually put some back in. I only need 90, and that's like 120. Perfect, 94. I'll take that. And then I'm going to add water to it. I'd like to add 385 grams of water. I guess I can't really put this down to look at my bowl, but it's just the starter in there so far. So I'm going to zero out my scale. Grab some water. Now you're seeing this tea kettle, you're probably thinking, are you putting hot water in here? Not really. I've just slightly warmed some of my water because I think it tends to mix better when the water has been, you know, it's not when it's not freezing cold or it's just warmed a little bit. I think it mixes really good. Okay, that was a little bit extra, so I might scoop a little bit out. There we go. Actually, that wasn't too bad. Should have just left it in there. Okay, so if we have that going, what I like to do next is just give this a little mix before I go and measure out my flour. I like to use this device. It's just a sourdough whisk, I think they call it. I got it on Amazon. And I don't know if you can see, but it really does help it to just really mesh together. All right, now I can set this aside. I'm gonna measure the salt and the flour. What I usually do is just take off the cap of my salt container and I twist it so that it's closed. And I measure my salt that way. 12 grams or close to it, that's 11, so we'll take it. And now I'm gonna need 520 grams of flour. I've been keeping dumping my flour into this container. I don't like it so much because it is plastic and I try not to use plastics too much. So eventually I'm gonna try to find a flour bin that is maybe either better quality plastic that doesn't have like BPA and stuff like that in it, or maybe a glass container or something. I'm trying to find something. So if you guys have any tips on where you store your flour, I've just been dumping my bag into this because I find scooping from my bag always tends to feel like really messy and stuff flies out. So I'm just gonna dump this in. We need 520. This bowl is not big enough, but let's get about 300 in here and then we'll do the rest. All right, so that's 300. I need 220 more. I'm just gonna go ahead and mix this into my bowl that has the starter and the water already mixed together. Just trying to show you guys the what it's looking like so far. I need a better camera system here to do videos like this. Let's go farther away, that might help. Oh, just dump that in there. I like to try to pour it in slowly, but whatever. So the consistency you're looking for here is sort of a shaggy dough. It might be a little sticky, but you don't want it runny, okay? And you don't want it too stiff or anything. You don't want it, it's not gonna be smooth at this point. So let me add my extra 220 grams I still need to add. That's about 250, so let's take some out. It doesn't have to be exact, you know, like there's 225, that's fine. I don't know if you can see why I call it shaggy dough. It's just, you know what I mean? It's because of the way the flour and the starter mix together. It is quite shaggy, especially when you look at it in real life, not just in the video. But anyways, this is my dough making process. It's actually really simple. What I'm gonna do after this is all mixed is I'm actually gonna take a wet or damp tea towel and I'm just gonna cover it, and I'm gonna cover it for 20 minutes, and then I'm gonna come back because after 20 minutes the dough will have time to kind of relax, kind of mold together a little bit, and that's when I'm gonna start my first stretch and folds. So sometime I will get on here and do a video about the stretch and folds. I don't know if I'm gonna do that today if I have time. But when I do the stretch and folds, you wanna do at least two sets of them if you can. Sometimes I do 4. I think last night when I did my stretch and folds, I did 4 sets. So the reason I'm making bread again, since I made some last night, making it again today because I do wanna make a loaf to bring to a friend tomorrow. So someone that just had a baby, she's been dreaming about my sourdough, she said. So trying to make her some bread. Just hope this loaf turns out nice. And when I do the stretch and folds, basically you're just taking dough from one side, grabbing it with your hand, stretching it up and over to this side. And then I turn the bowl a quarter turn. And I'm gonna stretch it from this corner again, bring it back to this corner. Do the same thing. So basically I'm pulling from all 4 sides and stretching and folding it to the other side of it. So I do that on all 4 corners, cover it, let it rest for 15 minutes. And then when the timer goes off, I do the stretch and folds again, like I said, about 2 to 4 times. And then after that, you're just covering it for the night and letting it sit overnight on your counter. And then the next morning, whenever I came out to it this morning, it was so nicely risen. It was like perfect, great dome shape to it. You touch the dough a little bit with a floured finger and it springs right back. It just felt really nice. So then at that point, I grabbed the dough from the center, stretched it up really high, put it back down, and then I did a couple stretch and folds. And then at that point, I rolled it into a ball, pinched a seam closed, kind of pull up from both sides, pinch it closed, make like a little seam on it. And then I put it into a floured Banneton basket, or you can put it into a floured, just another bowl. And then I put it in the fridge, and then it can sit in the fridge for an hour or longer. It could sit in the fridge for another day if you wanted to. Personally, I'm just letting it sit in the fridge for a couple hours today, and then I'm going to bake it. And you want to make sure you preheat your pan in the oven for about an hour, or at least preheat the pan in the oven for at least a half hour before you go and take your bread out to put it in the pan, okay? So anyways, I won't get too into detail on that. Just wanted to show you guys my process, talk a little bit more about discard. So guys, now that I've discarded some of my starter, made it into bread dough, there's only a little bit left, right? There's like, I would say about 20% is left in this jar right now. So now it's time to refeed. So I'm going to put this guy back on the scale, and we're gonna add 50 grams of flour, 50 grams of water. There we go. And then we'll just mix this together. And at this point, I can take my starter and put it in the fridge if I want. I can recover it. Where my cover went, I'll find it in a minute. I can recover it and just put it in the fridge and then not take it out until like the day of the next time I want to bake. That will work. Or I could leave it out on my counter and then maybe tomorrow I bake more bread with it. Maybe I don't. So it's kind of whatever you want to do. And in the beginning, it's going to seem like confusing. You don't know what to do with it. Maybe it's overwhelming. You're going to start to get into a rhythm and realize if you want to leave it on your counter or if you want to put it in the fridge. You can keep creating discard. If you leave it on your counter and have to discard out every day and refeed, then you're going to be creating a stack of discard in your fridge to use for other recipes. So if you're someone that wants to be using a lot of discard, you think, I'm going to be using this for pizza, I'm going to be making, you know, whatever for your family, you might want to just leave it on the counter so that you have weekly discard to be using for different recipes. You might not, because at some point I found that I had too much discard and I wasn't using it often enough. So I decided, you know what? I think I'm mostly going to keep this starter in the fridge for now until I'm in a season where I feel like, or maybe just a week or a day where I feel like, okay, I want to be using some discard recipes. And at that point, you can leave it on your counter for a few days, okay? But just so you know, this thing is still going to grow in the fridge. Now, if you don't have a mature starter like me, if you don't have a starter you've been using to bake with yet, or it's not ready to bake with, you don't want to keep it in your fridge. You want to keep yours on your counter for like 2 weeks straight while you're feeding it and discarding every day, okay? So you're not at the stage to really put yours in the fridge. I just wouldn't do it. But now with a mature starter, it's totally fine to keep it in the fridge. You're going away for the weekend, put it in the fridge. You don't need to bring it with you, okay? You don't have to treat this like a little baby and bring it with you everywhere. This can just get put away and then you come back to it whenever you're ready, okay? And then when you take it out of the fridge, you just might have to bring it back to room temperature. So when I do that, I just usually bring it out. Sometimes I get a little cloth I fold, put underneath my starter so it's nice and cozy. Just let it sit out all day until like later in the afternoon, and then it kind of has come to room temperature. At that point, if I decide I want to discard and refeed, I can, or if it looks like I could just bake with it, I'll just bake with it. Another thing I like to do is put it in the oven. So I'll put a tray in the oven. I don't turn the oven on. I just put the oven light on and set the jar on top of the tray and then keep the light on, and that will help your starter kind of grow or just warm up, whatever you're trying to do. So that's another trick, or the microwave, that works too because that has a little light. So that's it for today. I'm gonna cover this, put it away. I'll be baking with it probably in a few more days, not anytime soon, so it's gonna go in the fridge. I hope you guys found this valuable, but please drop any questions because I know this can be confusing. So anything that was confusing or not clarified for you, let me know so that I can make sure I clarify for you in the comments. All right, have a great day, everyone. Bye.